Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm the House Hacker. Today I want to talk to you about the corporate ladder, fallacies around climbing it, and how to climb it most effectively. Now before we begin, I just want to put out a disclaimer. Nothing that I'm about to talk about is intended to disparage anyone, put anyone down. The whole goal here is to shed a light on information that has created a discrepancy in power because it's allocated to one side over the other. So I'm going to not give any names of people or companies. This is just about what I have seen. And so that's actually what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with my background, and then we're going to transition into the issues, and then finally into the strategies that you can employ so you can find the greatest success in climbing the ladder. So I started my career in 2009 when I joined the military. Then in 2015, I went into the civilian sector. And generally, people with military background, the natural transition for them would be into the defense industry. Then, from 2015 to 2019, I worked in defense. Then in 2019, I made my transition into software development. Specifically, I was the guy who envisioned the future of a software product. I helped work with the customer to make sure that it was specifically designed to their intent. I've held various levels of managerial positions. And to give some insight, the highest position that I've held as a manager was at one company where I was in a category, a managerial job category. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but job categories would be something like engineer, and then you would have a numerical value assigning their level of experience. So an engineer 1 would be like entry level, and then you'd have like an engineer 4 or 5 would be your more senior engineers. Every company does it a little bit differently. So in this company, the managerial job category that I was in, 5 was in fact the highest within it. And then the next step above that is when you start getting into the director positions, and then after that you start getting to the executive positions. I was a level 5 in that managerial job category. And this gave me a lot of insight to some of the stuff that was going down. So now I'd like to transition to some of the issues with climbing the corporate ladder. The first issue is I've noticed a lot of companies like to bring in talent externally. When they have people internally that they could just send them off to get some training, some certification, some mentorship, so that when the position of manager opens up and try and push those people into it, what I see is a whole lot less of that and a whole lot more of, well, we need, a new project manager or a new program manager or any other kind of manager, and we're going to go and put a job listing. And even though we have individuals who are interested in the position, we're not going to give them a list of certifications we want to see them take. We're not going to mentor them or guide them onto this process. I've seen that a lot, where there's a preference, substantial preference, for external hires coming in and taking on managerial positions. The other issues are things like promises that your employer might try and make you take, and those promises are based on word alone. And they hope that based on your own integrity that you abide by these promises. But those promises don't go both ways. So to give you an example, I knew one individual who was, when he was hired, the hiring manager, who was also going to be his boss, asked him to stay at the company at least 2 years. Now, there's no contract because the state this occurred in was an at-will state. But before the 2-year mark was even hit, this guy who was committed to staying the full 2 years was laid off. These verbal agreements do not go both ways. And the thing that you can do that best benefits you is to look at these positions as a mutually beneficial relationship. Because as soon as it stops being mutually beneficial for the company, you're gone. And you should look at it the same way. As soon as your position is no longer mutually beneficial, that there's other opportunities out there that are substantially better, then you should start looking and you should start considering them seriously, because I guarantee you, if a lot of those companies, if they had those options, I mean, obviously there's exceptions everywhere, okay? But the general norm is if they have better options, they are going to take those options. And that's just the way that they do business. And that's not to shame them, it's not to disparage anybody. It's not fair if one person plays by one set of rules and somebody else is playing by a different set of rules. Another thing that I witnessed is I do remember going to this one meeting where there were enumeration of several ranking managers on a pretty large program. And the meeting started out with one of the senior managers there saying, "We're about to lose one of our best engineers, and we're estimating that we're going to lose him in 4 months." And when we started asking questions like, what is going on? Turns out this guy wants to be promoted into a managerial position. There was zero intent to ever put him in a managerial position. So they just told him, yeah, we'll keep looking. And they had it down to a science that, yeah, 4 months, it's what it's going to take. And that's what it took. That just gives you an idea. They not only had no interest in promoting, even though, I mean, this guy was really a really solid engineer. So it's just, I know why he wasn't put into the position that he wanted to go into. It just, they led him on and they calculated his frustration into the mathematics of the bottom line. So when you're looking at these situations and you're asking yourself, yeah, I told them I'd stick around, but I got another offer for, 30K more. Take it. It's just not it. They would not do the same for you. That's the truth. So when you go into these things, think about it from that perspective, and make sure that when you go into these discussions, that you're on equal footing. At the end of the day, the purpose of all of this is just to make sure you can go into these positions, these jobs, these career opportunities on equal footing with the employer. Because right now the rules are not quite balanced. So let's go ahead and dive right now into something a little bit more positive than just talking about negatives, and go right into how to climb the corporate ladder most effectively. So I was in two separate industries. I reached six figures in both industries that I was. I rapidly excelled up, and the way that I did that is I actively sought out varieties of experience. Okay, this is going to come from job hopping. People aren't going to like it. People are going to ask questions about it, and there are reasonable answers for it. So 1 to 2 years, switch for new opportunities. And here's the thing. There's a big difference between having 10 years of experience and 1 year of experience 10 times, right? Just because you spent 10 years at a job doing the exact same thing does not mean that you have, I mean, sure, you put on your resume and say 10 years of experience, but someone who has had 5 different jobs, 2 years of experience at each of those jobs, will be a much better versed individual than someone who's been doing the exact same thing for 10 years. So you need to really think about how you want to approach your career, because the whole corporate loyalty as it used to be does not exist. And honestly, I have strong doubts if it ever really existed. Okay? But that was before my time, so I'm not going to question the past. Just focus on how to expand your experience. And it doesn't have to be job hopping. You can also look for opportunities within your same company, but don't allow yourself to stagnate at the same job. Just ensure that you're constantly seeking new opportunities. Be willing to do what others aren't willing to do. Now, I'm not telling you to do things like work hours that you're not getting paid. No, don't do that. That's a very solid line in the sand that you should draw. That's an important boundary you should establish with every employer that you have. Okay? But for an example of this was one of the things that catapulted my career was my willingness to go to countries and locations in the defense industry that the majority of people in the industry just weren't willing to go to, like Afghanistan. I've spent about 26 months total over a course of enumeration of deployments in Afghanistan. That willingness to go there and to stay there for extended periods of time really catapulted my career. It communicated a sense of commitment, resilience that other candidates just didn't have. Additionally, I offer a lot of my employees flexibility. I don't ever have an issue with an employer calling me out of work, but I do expect mutual flexibility. And so most employers, if you were flexible with them, tend to also be flexible with you, and they tend to also appreciate more flexible individuals than less flexible individuals. The individual who is willing to get on an airplane tomorrow night to go and take care of some problem in a different country is a reliable employee that you know you can count on versus somebody who is going to say, well, I don't really feel like going. I had plans with some friends tonight. Flexibility will get you there, especially at the beginning of your career. Later on, you don't have to budge on that. But if you really want to propel your career, especially the early stages, as fast as possible forward, you got to be flexible. All right. And this last one is really, really important, okay? Make it your job to learn everybody else's job. Now, this isn't what you do in your normal workday. Whenever you find yourself having a little bit of extra time, learn what everybody else's job is. I know there's a huge push across many careers, many experts, many senior individuals. They will sit down, they'll tell you that being a jack of all trades is not the way. I'm here to tell you that is not true. I am personally a jack of all trades, and I'm a master of none. And I am very glad to not be a master of one. To be a master of one, I find to be extremely boring because you're stuck in a limited scope of things. But by being a jack of all trades, you get a wholesome perspective of what, your team needs to accomplish. You understand what, you're part of this one gear in the big machine, but by being a jack of all trades, you understand how your gear interacts with all the other gears. A master of one tends to lose sight of all the other gears around them, and where they might do something to improve a process within their system, they may lose sight of how that adjustment they made may negatively affect the bigger picture of things. And from the overall perspective, they've actually caused a net negative impact. But they won't know that because their perspective is limited in scope. If you make your responsibility to become aware of everything around you, all the other positions around you, it enables you to do all kinds of things. Like if you suddenly have a roadblock, an individual who decides that they're going to go on extended leave and nobody else can fill their position, you can now step into that role, not for everybody else. I mean, you would step in it to accomplish your own tasks. Your tasks no longer need to be reliant on anybody else. You can accomplish every step, every task in the process that your company needs to accomplish their mission. So it's really important to kind of familiarize yourself with that. It also allows you flexibility so that if your industry is dying, and people complain about dying industries, you have an ability to pivot. When I was able to switch to software, that didn't just come overnight. It was a decade of me self-educating myself on software. And when I was finally put in a role where I was required to engage with software development professionals, with individuals focused in research and development, I already had this background, this foundation to go into it. And also within defense, defense is a large category. There's a whole bunch of subsections, and I was not just in one section. I floated across an enumeration of sections. If you were to sit down and look at my resume, you will not find consistency by any means. There are positions that you would wonder, how does someone do this job and this job? It just doesn't make any sense. It's because they're both interesting positions. Both jobs were interesting for me. And I had the ability to accomplish both tasks, and I had individuals within the industry that vouched for me because they worked with me in the past. So relationships would also play a role. Maybe that should have been point 4 that I should have mentioned earlier, but building good, strong relationships will get you there. But if you do all of these other things, if you're flexible, if you're moving around between companies, you'll build a variety of networks, and people will know you as the reliable, flexible guy across the board. And so that's how these things culminate together to put you in the greatest position possible to climb the corporate ladder. I hope this video was insightful. I shared some of my experiences. I would share more. Honestly, questions would lead to questions, and I would not be done with this video within 2, 3, 4 hours. So maybe in future videos, we'll kind of dive into some of the other details. But for now, so I hope with this video, you found it to be entertaining, you found it to be informative. And if you liked it, please like, comment, and subscribe below. Let me know what you think. You agree, you disagree. I mean, I've seen YouTubers go both direction on these. And this is just my insight. This is what I've seen from conversations behind closed doors. This is just based off of what I've seen happen to people. And it's only fair that everybody is aware of what the rules are and that people aren't playing by different rules, right? All right. Thanks for watching, guys.